The first thing I want to say is a very obvious thing, which is standing up for yourself is difficult. It's not easy. And some people naturally are able to do that. I didn't do it so much in my life that now I can't help but do it. I, didn't stand up for myself a ton when I was a kid, mostly because I didn't have the right tools or whatever. And I think, if you're like a victim of bullying, that shame kind of follows you until it kind of boils over. Enough of those incidents happen to you and it kind of boils over into, all right, fuck this. I'm done. I'm going to start standing up for myself. And then you do it once, you see how easy it is, and then you keep doing it. And that kind of pattern of behavior suddenly makes it really okay to deal with conflict. You're not so afraid of confrontation. And I think there's a lot of ways as an adult, a young adult, that you can kind of force yourself to be okay with confrontation. And I wanted to kind of describe how I deal with confrontation. This can be professional confrontation with like a boss or a fellow employee. This can be personal confrontation with, relationships, people that you know. It can also be like a civilian confrontation when dealing with, when dealing with doctors or, insurance companies or whatever it might be. They're not your advocate. You are your best advocate. And so you kind of have to learn how to deal with confrontation in a way where it's other people aren't going to be able to take advantage of you, right? This is like essential to kind of being an adult. Some people don't understand the saying that you attract more flies with honey than you do vinegar. And I'm a big fan of that. So much so that I've turned it into kind of a modus operandi of how I live. And let me explain. So I have this thing that I call a contract with myself, okay? And my contract is on my heart because it involves principles and virtues and how I feel as far as what's worth standing up for, what hills I will die on, what things I will let people get away with, and then what I won't. And I'm very aware of what is in the contract. And the reason why I do that is because I believe you can't be hot-tempered and hot-headed all the time. You have to be reasonable. People, like salespeople, it's their job to try to take advantage of you and make the sale. They're doing manipulation tactics. Find common ground, make you visualize this product being tied to your happiness and blah, blah, blah. That's just the way the world works. People are not only not your advocate, but more often than not, there's an enemy effect because they have their own agenda and they're trying to take advantage of you. And it's funny how well the conversion rates are for those like timeshare sessions that they make you sit in, because they use like really hard pressure sales tactics. And a lot of people don't have the wherewithal to be like, no means no means no, right? It's easy to say no. It's hard to say no means no. And it's very, very difficult for most people to say no means no means no, which is essentially stop what you're doing. It's not going to work. Right. And that third no is kind of what I want to talk about a little bit. So, standing up for yourself. Number one, you are going to have a physiological response to confrontation. And depending on your life, lack of confrontation, or trauma related to confrontation, that response is essentially going to range from rapid breathing to your hands are shaking. You feel like your heart is going to be out of your chest. You kind of get tunnel vision. And, this might sound like a soldier crawling through the trenches, but people have that confrontation reaction with literally just asking their boss for a raise. And it's not because you're weak or a coward or are unbrave. It's because that's just a physiological response to confrontation for a lot of people, right? The trick is this. Anger immediately hijacks that part of your nervous system that is fear-based and turns it, right? Passive fear turns it into active anger, right? And I think that's why it's so important to have that contract with yourself of, I'm willing to put up with XYZ, but the moment that it gets to this, I'm done. And I think that that's really effective, because what you're doing is you're taking real world conversations and examples and the ways that people push you and pry at you and pick on you, and you're saying, I'm going to let it bottle up until it crosses a line, and then I'm going to say something, and then I'm going to actively stick up for myself, and then I'm going to actively not let anyone kind of push the line with me any further. And that can be really helpful, because there's like a built-in nervous system hijacking trick there, right? What you're really saying is, I'm going to let myself get progressively and slowly more angry over time internally until it reaches a boiling point where I say, F this, I am done, right? Some people, they have a really kind of a hair trigger response, where the second that they get into confrontation, they immediately hit anger, right? And that can be useful, except for the fact that, like I said, you attract more flies with honey than you do vinegar. And getting angry at people in your life and relationships, and the person on the phone that you're trying to get a refund from, and your doctor because they're not listening to anything you have to say, that you're not gonna get your way, right? And there's another good saying, which is like, don't get even, get your way. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to not just have people we've already established, you can't not have people pushing the line with you, because their agendas exist outside of your reality, right? Outside of your life and what's good for you. All their agendas are trying to pry their way into your bubble. And that is the way the world is. So to try to avoid confrontation is literally to try to avoid what's best for you in all circumstances. And it's not a good way to be. It's not a good way to live. So being able to have that line with yourself, I think you should actually literally do. You should literally go get a piece of paper and a pen, and you should say, what am I willing to endure? Am I willing to endure name calling, right? If I'm walking down the street and someone goes, hey, you're a bug, blah, blah, blah. Is that something where I go, no, I will not let this person disrespect me. I must fight for my honor. Or do I go, I don't care, right? Some people really care. Some people really, really care. Some people don't care at all. There's a great book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers. And in it, it talks about how honor is primarily a lower class quality. It's a lie that it's like the foremost thing of nobility. Honor in nobility only exists in certain cultures and at certain times in history. For the most part, on the whole, it's actually a lower class quality to care so much about your honor that you will not let slights come against you, right? So something to keep in mind. The idea of, I'm not going to let anyone disrespect me. Okay, well, that's a really hard way to live, because literally nobody respects you, and nor should they, because who the hell are you? They don't know you from Adam, right? You haven't earned their respect. And I'm a big proponent of respect isn't something that should just be given freely. It should be something that is earned. You should be decent to other human beings, and they should be decent to you, right? Those are called pleasantries. Pleasantries are different than respect. Pleasantries are, thank you for opening the door for me. You can go ahead and cross the street. Oh, we're at a 4-way stop. Okay, you go first. Pleasantries are how civilization keeps on running, but true respect, that's someone not only earning our attention, but our active listening and participation in what they're doing. And respect is definitely earned. But like I said, make a list of those things. Are you going to get someone mad are you going to get mad if someone, doesn't have your back on something, or kind of, you ask for a favor and they say no? Are you the kind of person that's going to be like, okay, no problem, not a big deal, but then hold that grudge a year later and say, when they come to you, you say no, because you're the kind of person that holds a grudge? Only kind of how you respond to those type of things. Me, I'm big on grudges. Very petty. And I keep a very long ledger in my mind of, people that wouldn't lift a finger to do anything to help me. And that goes the other way too. People that didn't need to do literally anything, that went out of their way to help me. And I will always remember those people. So make a list of what you're willing to put up with and what you're not kind of willing to put up with. When you're building out a business plan, the thing that's at the very top, right, is that mission statement, that executive summary. Those might be two different things, but let's just say mission statement, right? The 2 to 3 sentences of the overall goal of the company. When you get this piece of paper and you're writing it down, you kind of need a mission statement for why you want to be better at dealing with confrontation. I think a lot of people out there like, you don't want to deal with confrontation? Get into martial arts, go work out, build up that confidence. Doesn't fucking have anything to do with confrontation, bro. It has nothing to do with real world confrontation. Real world confrontation is you go to the doctor, you're absolutely sick of them rushing you through appointments and not listening to what you say and not taking the test that what you want done seriously, and you're telling them, I have XYZ symptoms and I would really like you to use your brain to investigate it, and use your collective medical knowledge to try to figure it out. Pretend like you're a character on a TV show and figure it the fuck out, because I'm tired of trying to Google everything myself. And I feel like that's kind of what the healthcare industry is these days, is you do 90% of their job, and then you walk in there and you lay out all the facts of the case, and they go, okay, let's try this. And then they write you some script because there's 10 pharmaceutical companies, and then one of every doctor, an oncologist, a dermatologist, a podiatrist, that they give kickbacks to. So they have this Rolodex of referrals that they can kick you down the line to. And then they have this Rolodex of prescriptions that they get kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies that they can just prescribe you. They don't want to think anymore. You're doing all your thinking. Can you tell I have a problem with this? Yeah, I have a huge problem with this. And so real world confrontation is you being able to be your best advocate when you go into the doctor's office and you say, no more bullshit. Draw my blood, send in this test. I don't care if you don't think I have Lyme disease or not. I want to know. Your guess isn't helping me sleep at night. I want some results, right? I think that's something a lot of people here in the US can relate to, dude, because you can't even really see a doctor anymore. You go to see a PA, right? Which, shout out to PAs. PAs are great, but at the end of the day, like, health insurance is really expensive. It'd be nice if I could see an MD once a year. It sounds harsh to PAs. I'm not trying to be harsh to PAs. The other thing too, when it comes to like dealing with real world confrontation, dude, is it's so incredibly difficult. There's this thing called buyer's remorse, right? Where let's say you save up a bunch of money over a long period of time, and you're like, man, I really want to buy this. I really want to buy this one thing, and I can't wait to get it. And once I get it, it's going to be the thing that I need to do the things I need to do, and it's going to make me feel good. And you buy it, and then you almost immediately, not necessarily like regret it, but you really start second guessing whether or not you should have done that. And that's really common with big purchases. I feel like you get that same feeling. It's like standing up for yourself remorse, especially when someone tries to push the envelope a little bit too far and a little bit too hard with you, and you have to, in equal measure, go, you can't just say no. You can't just say no means no, or no means no means no. You got to say back the fuck up, right? Like you kind of have to shut that down right then and there, because they went from 0 to 60. So it forces you to go 0 to 60, right? And if I have watched people I know kind of get taken advantage of in their situations, because they're really, really kind people, and they can't say things just simply like, hey, when you do that, it really bothers me, and I would really appreciate if you didn't do that anymore, right? It's amazing how difficult that is for people to say. And what's crazier, it can be easier to say that to strangers than close friends. The closer the person, the harder it is to be like, yo, I don't like this. I don't like this dynamic. This has to change, right? That can be really hard. That can be like borderline life-changing. If there's a dynamic that is pre-existed for a long time, and that's like the dynamic of the relationship, and then all of a sudden you're like, hey, I don't like that you do this. Stop doing it, right? What you're almost doing is you're giving them an ultimatum, which is like, stop doing that thing or we're not going to be friends anymore. And that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. Especially when you're like challenging your own support system, challenging the people around you. That can be really, really tough. So how do I deal with confrontation? How do I deal with what I would call extreme professional confrontation? Let me give a little bit of backstory here. And when I say a little bit, I mean 20 seconds. I'm not gonna tell you my life story. Okay. I go into meetings with people that both control my livelihood. That I work in like YouTube, and the top 1% of YouTube specifically, and that is a very small group of people. So if I tell someone to fuck off, word's gonna spread around that I did that. And so I not only have to balance artistic integrity and things that I believe in and know to be true to either help them or help the people on their team, but also how I'm reacting. Not only if I'm going to react, but how I'm reacting, because there's reputation to maintain, and right. So I can't. But then, okay, so that's the background. But this is where it's important to you, is when you're trying to maintain reputation in a workplace, and there's something that's bothering you, and this is true even outside of a workplace, and there's something that's bothering you, and you try to have someone does something that makes you mad. I do what I call just a brain dump on about a one sheet of paper, and I will literally do it like no filter, just no filter, one sheet of paper, and I'll be like, look, you are a piece of meh, and how dare you, meh, 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 and you think you're so meh, 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 well, how about meh, 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 and I'll write it all down, and I'll write it all out, and then I will literally throw it away, because I'm not going to say any of that to them. I'm going to try to, but it's a good exercise to get all those words out, because sometimes people that have a problem with confrontation, it's just you have a problem with finding the words in the moment. People get a little tongue-tied. People aren't very good at being Johnny on the spot, and that's fine. But, it's like you wish you would have said that thing, but like that night later you can't sleep because you're like, God, why didn't I say that? Or why did I say this? Or whatever. Sometimes it can just feel good and cathartic to organize our thoughts. And the best way to do that is literally writing them down. Just put all your malice and hatred like Sauron on a sheet of paper and just write down everything you want to say to that person. And you might find that there's a sentence or two in there that really cuts to the core of what the problem is, and you just figure out a way to slightly rephrase it, and now you're cooking, baby. Now you're doing what you need to be doing. Now you're looking at confrontation as an opportunity for growth, rather than something to be avoided, like an obstacle. So yeah, having that contract with yourself, write down the things that are absolutely going to bother you, that you're willing to absolutely die on that hill for. For me, there's a ton of stuff I don't even really care about. I don't really care about people screwing me out of money anymore. It's happened so often in this industry that if someone makes me eat $500-$600, I just put their little name in my book and I go, the next 10 people that ask me what I think about so-and-so, I'm going to go, oh, they're not great. Because what's more valuable than sometimes anything else is reputation. And if you are the kind of person that just treats other people like crap, sometimes it can be better to try to preserve your reputation than try to get your way, you know? And so anyway, I have my contract. I know what I'll endure. I don't care if people try to rip me off. I don't care if people call me names. You know, I don't have a lot of pride, or I'm not a very prideful person. And so I don't really care if people think I'm dumb, or none of that bothers me, right? It's funny, none of that bothers me. But then if someone gets, like, if someone philosophically thinks that I think a certain way that I don't think, I lose my shit. If someone's like, but you think this, I'll be like, I don't think that at all. Like, if someone tries to put words in my mouth or tries to put a box around me and say, like, that's who he is, that really bothers me. So have your things that really bother you, and then everything else, know that in the moment when you're choosing not to do anything about them, because you've already written them down on a sheet of paper. You know that these are things that don't bother you. They're in a column marked, I can deal with this. I don't have to react. And then when the other situations come up where you feel like you probably should react, right? Those are on a piece of paper, and you'll be able to tell yourself, this is one of the things that violate my contract. I need to do something here. This is a deal I made with myself, right? So then you go into a lot of confrontational situations kind of prepared, right? Prepared on paper, like legitimate preparation, having a battle plan for confrontation. Very important. Right. And then the other thing is kind of doing that brain dump, that rage dump on just a one sheet, writing down all your thoughts, writing down all the stuff that makes you frustrated, tie it back to your childhood, weave between the lines, just make it all of the animosity that you feel on this piece of paper. And then see if there's anything worth there that's actually worth sharing. If it's just a bunch of, I like to, a little bit about me. When I do that, when I write that, it's usually in the form of an email, like a one-page email that's like, hey, you stupid. Yeah. Luckily, I've never accidentally sent one. That would be bad. So those are two things I do. And the last thing that I really do to deal with confrontation, and this works at every level, it doesn't matter if it's personal, professional, civil, whatever it might be, is This is going to sound like a really pessimistic worldview, but I generally have found it to be true. And if you disagree, please let me know in the comments. People tend to operate in a way where they're trying to get information out of you. And it can feel like so much in our life is us explaining ourselves to others. It's telling the story of, you know, what I did last week, or why I'm feeling this way, or why I want that raise, or why I need you to change this type of behavior, or why people often ask us to justify our wants and needs and desires. And I just don't play that game at all. The second that it becomes the game of why? What makes you think that? Or, oh, can you elaborate on that? I simply just go, no. And I have another video about this, right? The importance of saying no. The second that someone asks you to justify how you're feeling, no, dude, you don't need to justify that. When you're going into a confrontation, it's almost like they're inviting you into like a trap, like a little gotcha moment where they can be like, aha, so you don't know how you really feel because you can't explain it. And unfortunately, I feel like the vast majority of people do that, you know, and I don't think it's right. I also think it's a really cheap trick. And I think that it's amazing how quickly you see people like the Wizard of Oz, like the guy behind the curtain, how quickly you see people for what they are when you just refuse to play that game of syntax and semantics, right? You're just like, no. Can you elaborate on that? No. That's huge. If you can do those three things, right? And saying no and having a contract, knowing what you're willing to fight for, what you don't care about, and then being able to organize your thoughts. That's it, baby. That's dealing with confrontation. That is dealing with confrontation in a really healthy way, because you're not letting your emotions control you in the moment and steer you wherever they want to steer you. And you're also not letting the manipulation tactics of other people and their agendas, which are constantly trying to poke into our bubble, steer you either. You're standing steadfast in your own two shoes, and you're standing tall, and you know exactly where you stand in all situations. And that is the absolute golden key to confrontation. Knowing where you stand. Knowing where you stand. Knowing, not politically, not religiously, not philosophically. All those things are actually very important when you're trying to think about what you stand for as a human being. But just in the day-to-day life, right, of daily confrontation, knowing what you're willing to endure and what you won't is really all you need. Knowing what you can put up with and what you can sleep at night with, having been done to you. That's it. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear, when you guys are dealing with confrontation or you're having trouble dealing with confrontation, what are some examples in your life? What are some examples where you've had a hard time? Maybe you haven't even confronted that thing yet, right? What is it? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear about it. Or tell me about like a win that you had where, you did confront it and it wasn't nearly as bad as you thought it was. Because that's usually how these things go. We have the outcome in our mind of like, well, XYZ is going to happen if I try to confront the thing, right? But it's usually never like that. People are generally, most people don't know how to deal with confrontation, So when you actually are the one that brings it to the table, it majority of the time tends to go in your favor. So I've found. But yeah, I want to hear from you guys. Thank you for watching. Dude, I really appreciate everybody's support making these videos so far. The people's comments and the love that I have been sent in the DMs, I cannot express what it means to me. It's so huge, and I appreciate it, and I love you guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.